I woke up in a hospital bed, body broken, waiting for comfort. Instead, my parents handed me a loan application for my brother. They didn't ask if I was okay. That was the moment I realized I had been an orphan all along. Before we begin today's story, we have an urgent announcement. Due to technical issues, this channel is shutting down. But don't worry, the stories continue. Please subscribe to our new channel, Daily Drip Stories. You can find the link in the video description, the pinned comment, and the collaboration tag on this video. Make sure to switch over now so you don't miss out. Thank you for your support. Now back to the story. The first thing I registered was the sound. It was a rhythmic, synthetic beeping that seemed to be keeping time with the throbbing ache in my temples. Beep, throb, beep, throb. I tried to open my eyes, but my eyelids felt like they were weighted down with lead. My mouth tasted like copper and antiseptic. I tried to shift, to move my legs, but a sharp, blinding bolt of pain shot up from my left hip, stealing the breath from my lungs before I could even gasp. "Easy, Layla, easy," a soft voice murmured. A nurse. I couldn't see her clearly, just a blur of blue scrubs. "You were in a car accident. You're in the ICU. You've had surgery on your hip and your ribs." The memories fragmented and then slammed back into place. The rain, the slick asphalt, the headlights of the truck crossing the center line, the crunch of metal that sounded like the earth splitting open. "My parents," I croaked. The words felt like sandpaper against my throat. "Did you call Janice and Greg?" I didn't call them Mom and Dad in that moment. I needed to know if the emergency contacts listed in my phone had been reached. I needed to know I wasn't alone. "They're outside," the nurse said, checking a monitor. "They've been waiting for you to wake up. Do you feel up to seeing them?" Relief washed over me, cool and soothing, temporarily dulling the fire in my hip. They were here. They had come. Despite everything, despite the missed birthdays, the forgotten graduations, the phone calls that always ended with them asking for a favor, they were here. "Yes," I whispered, "please." The nurse nodded and slipped out. I closed my eyes, preparing myself. I imagined Janice's face crumpled with worry, Greg holding my hand, his stoic facade cracking just enough to show he cared. I prepared myself to be the daughter they finally worried about. The door creaked open. I forced a weak smile, turning my head on the pillow. "Hey," I managed to say. Janice walked in first. She was wearing her pristine beige trench coat, not a hair out of place. Greg followed, looking at his watch. There were no flowers. There were no tears. Janice wasn't carrying a card. She was clutching a manila folder. "Layla," Janice said. Her tone wasn't frantic or relieved. It was brisk, businesslike. "Thank God you're awake. The traffic getting here was an absolute nightmare. We've been sitting in the waiting room for 40 minutes. I blinked, confused. "I had surgery, the truck." We know," Greg said, stepping up to the side of the bed. He didn't take my hand. He placed his hands on the bed rail, leaning in. "Look, we don't have a lot of time before we have to meet Ryan. He's in a bit of a bind, and since you're incapacitated, we need to get this sorted out now." Janice opened the folder and placed it on the tray table, shoving it over my legs. The plastic of the table bumped my cast, sending a fresh wave of nausea rolling through me. "What is this?" I asked, my voice trembling. "It's the paperwork for Ryan's business loan," Janice said, clicking a pen and holding it out to me. "The bank finally approved the structure, but they need a guarantor with your credit score and income bracket. We told them you were eager to help." I stared at the pen, then I looked at my mother. I looked for a flicker of concern, a hint of maternal instinct. I saw nothing but impatience. "I just woke up," I whispered. "I could have died." "But you didn't," Greg said, checking his watch again. "And Ryan is waiting. Just sign the bottom line, Layla. Don't be dramatic." The pain in my hip was nothing compared to the sudden, hollow ache in my chest. The betrayal was worse than the diagnosis itself. I didn't take the pen. My hand remained limp on the scratchy hospital sheet, my fingers twitching slightly. The beeping of the monitor seemed to speed up. a frantic digital tempo matching the rising panic in my chest. "I can't believe this," I said. My voice was gaining a little strength, fueled by a mixture of adrenaline and pure, unadulterated shock. "You're asking me for money? Now." Janice sighed, a long, exasperated sound that I had heard 1,000 times throughout my childhood. It was the sound she made when I asked for help with homework, or when I needed a ride to band practice. It was the sound that said my existence was an inconvenience. "It's not money, Layla. It's a signature," Janice corrected, waving the pen in front of my face like she was trying to entice a stubborn cat. "It's a cosign. It costs you nothing right now, but it means everything to your brother. He's on the verge of a breakthrough with this crypto mining venture. He just needs hardware." "Crypto mining?" I repeated. "Last month it was dropshipping. The month before that it was flipping vintage sneakers. Greg, Dad, look at me." Greg looked at me, but his eyes were glazed over, looking through me. "He's really passionate about this one, kiddo. And you know how the economy is. He just needs a leg up. You're the one with the fancy supply chain job. You're the one with the 6-figure salary and the paid-off condo. It's the least you can do for family." "The least I can do?" I tried to sit up, but the agony in my ribs forced me back down with a sharp gasp. Tears pricked at the corners of my eyes, not from sadness, but from the physical torture of moving. "I have 3 broken ribs. My hip is shattered. I need water. I need help." "I'll get a nurse on the way out," Janice said, capping the pen with an aggressive click. She looked at Greg. "She's looped up on meds. She's not thinking clearly. We can't use her signature if she's under the influence anyway. It won't hold up." "True," Greg muttered. "We'll come back tomorrow. Hopefully, the anesthesia will have worn off and she'll be more reasonable." Janice snatched the folder back. She looked down at me, her expression hardening. "Rest up, Layla, but think about Ryan. He's been so worried about his funding. Don't be selfish." And then they left. They turned their backs on their daughter, who was hooked up to 4 different machines, and walked out the door because I wouldn't sign a piece of paper. They didn't adjust my pillow. They didn't kiss my forehead. They didn't even fill the plastic water cup that sat empty on the nightstand. I lay there in the silence that followed, staring at the ceiling tiles. I counted the holes in the plaster. 1, 2, 3, 100. I had to count to stop myself from screaming. An hour later, the door opened again. I flinched, expecting them to return with a notary public. But it was Sarah. Her hair was a mess. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and she was carrying a massive teddy bear and a bouquet of flowers that looked like she had bought out the entire hospital gift shop. "Oh my God, Layla." She practically sprinted to the bed, dropping everything on the floor and grabbing my hand, gently, so gently. "I came as soon as I saw the text. I was in a meeting, I didn't see it for 20 minutes, I'm so sorry. Are you okay? What did the doctor say? Do you need ice? Do you need me to kill the truck driver?" The contrast broke me, the sheer, undeniable difference between obligation and love. I started to sob. It hurt my ribs, it hurt my throat, but I couldn't stop. "Whoa, hey, Sarah cooed, stroking my hair away from my sweaty forehead. "It's okay, you're alive, you're safe." "My parents were here," I choked out. Sarah stiffened, she knew the history, she knew everything. And they asked me to co-sign a loan for Ryan. Then they left because I was too looped up to sign. Sarah's face went through a journey of emotions, confusion, realization, and then a dark, terrifying rage. Her jaw set. "They did what?" "They left me, Sarah. They just left." Sarah squeezed my hand, her grip grounding me. Okay, listen to me. They are done. We are done with them. You are not giving them a dime. You are not giving them a signature. You are going to recover, and you are going to let me handle the gatekeeping from now on." I looked at my best friend, feeling the warmth of her anger on my behalf. It was a protective fire. I took a deep breath, the pain in my ribs serving as a sharp reminder of my reality. Janice and Greg thought I was just emotional. They thought I was just the dutiful daughter who would eventually cave because I always had. They thought they were dealing with the Layla who begged for their approval. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. They didn't know about the durable power of attorney I had signed over to Sarah 3 months ago before my business trip to Tokyo. And they certainly didn't know about the update I had made to my will the day after Ryan stole my identity to open a credit card last year. To understand why my parents' visit was so heinous, you have to understand the ecosystem of my family. It was a simple, brutal hierarchy. Ryan was the sun, and the rest of us were just space debris burning up in his orbit. I was 3 years older than Ryan. By the time I was 12, I was making my own lunches, doing my own laundry, and forging my parents' signatures on my report cards because they couldn't be bothered to look at them. I wasn't neglected in the legal sense. There was food in the fridge and a roof over my head, but as emotionally invisible. Ryan, on the other hand, was the miracle. If he drew a stick figure, he was the next Picasso. If he failed a math test, the teacher was incompetent. I worked 2 jobs through college to pay my tuition. I graduated with honors, landed a junior role in logistics, and clawed my way up the corporate ladder to senior supply chain manager. I built a life of order, precision, and financial security. Ryan explored his passions. At 22, he wanted to be a DJ. Janice and Greg bought him $4,000 worth of equipment. He played 1 gig, got booed, and sold the equipment for weed money. At 24, he was going to be a real estate mogul. Greg took out a second mortgage to help him flip a condemned house. Ryan gutted the kitchen and then got bored. They lost 40 grand on that one. Now, at 26, it was crypto mining. But the antagonist wasn't just Ryan. Ryan was a symptom. The true architects of my misery were Janice and Greg. Janice was a master of the guilt trip. She had a way of looking at you, a wide-eyed, fragile stare, that made you feel like a monster for saying no. She wielded her disappointment like a weapon. We just want everyone to be happy, Layla. Why do you have to make everything a conflict? Greg was the enforcer. He didn't do emotions. He did transactions. To him, I was an asset with a high yield, and Ryan was a speculative investment he refused to sell at a loss. The next morning, the fog in my head had cleared, leaving behind a sharp, crystallized clarity. I was propped up in bed, sipping water through a straw when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Ryan. Ryan, heard you wrecked the car. That sucks. Mom says being difficult about the loan. Don't be a bitch, Layla. I have a deadline. Sign the papers so I can order the rigs. I'll pay you back in like 3 months max. This is huge. No, are you okay? No, I hope you're not in pain. Just don't be a bitch. I stared at the screen. A laugh bubbled up in my throat, dry and jagged. Bad news? Sarah asked. She was sitting in the visitor's chair, working on her laptop. She hadn't left my side all night. Ryan, I said, showing her the phone. Sarah read it and made a noise of disgust. He's unbelievable. He's actually delusional. He's not delusional, I said quietly, handing the phone back. He's conditioned. They trained him to be this way, and they train me to accept it. Well, training day is over, Sarah said, snapping the phone down on the table. Just then, the door opened. Janice and Greg walked in. They looked refreshed, rested. Janice was wearing a brighter coat today. Greg had a coffee in his hand. Good morning, sunshine, Janice chirped, as if yesterday hadn't happened, as if she hadn't walked out on her broken child. You look much better, much more alert. Greg placed the manila folder on the bed again. We spoke to the bank manager this morning. He said if we get the fax over by noon, we can still make the cutoff for the wire transfer. Ryan is waiting in the car. He didn't want to overwhelm you. He didn't want to overwhelm me, I repeated, my voice flat. Or he didn't want to look me in the eye after texting me to call me a bitch. Janice's smile faltered. Oh, Layla, don't take it personally. He's just stressed. He's a visionary, you know how high-strung they can be. I'm not signing it, I said. The room went dead silent. The hum of the air conditioner seemed to roar. Greg's face darkened. Excuse me. I am not signing the loan, I said, looking directly at my father. I am not co-signing for Ryan, not today, not ever. Layla, Janice's voice dropped, taking on that dangerous, wavering tone. Don't do this. We are a family. We help each other. We helped you when you were starting out. You didn't pay a cent for my college, I shot back. You didn't co-sign my car loan. You didn't come to my graduation because Ryan had a migraine. I have done this all by myself. You ungrateful little, Greg started, stepping forward. I wouldn't finish that sentence if I were you, Sarah said, standing up. She was 5'2", but in that moment, she looked 7 feet tall. Layla needs rest. If you are here to harass her about financial matters, I will have security remove you. Greg sneered at Sarah. This is a family matter. Stay out of it. He turned back to me, leaning over the bed, using his physical presence to intimidate me, just like he did when I was 16. You listen to me. You're sitting on a pile of cash, living in that fancy apartment, acting like you're better than us. You're going to sign this, or you can forget about coming home for Christmas. You can forget about us being part of your life. He thought it was a threat. He thought he was dangling a prize in front of me. He didn't realize he was offering me a way out. The door clicked shut behind Greg, sealing the silence in the room. The echo of his ultimatum, you can forget about us being part of your life, hung in. The sterile air, like a guillotine blade that had finally dropped. For a solid minute, neither Sarah nor I spoke. The only sound was the rhythmic whoosh hiss of the oxygen machine and the distant murmur of a hospital PA system. Then I exhaled. A long, shuddering breath that rattled my broken ribs, but somehow felt lighter than any breath I'd taken in years. Did he think, I started, my voice raspy, did he think that was a threat? Sarah sat back down, her hands trembling slightly as she smoothed the blanket over my legs. He thinks you're the same scared little girl who used to cry in my dorm room freshman year because they forgot your birthday. He doesn't know you anymore, Layla. He never knew me, I corrected. I stared at the closed door, the wood grain blurring as my eyes filled with tears. Not of sadness, but of a strange, mournful finality. He just threatened me with the one thing I've been too afraid to do myself. He threatened me with freedom. So what do we do? Sarah asked, her protective mode shifting into tactical mode. Do we call security? Do I get a restraining order? Not yet, I said, a cold resolve hardening in my gut. The supply chain manager in me was waking up. I dealt with logistics, with facts, with broken systems. And my family was the most broken system I had ever encountered. If I cut them off now, they'll just keep coming back. They'll harass me, they'll smear me to the extended family. I need to know why they are this desperate. Greg doesn't panic over a startup. He's cheap, but he's not reckless. Something is wrong. I pointed to the closet where my personal effects had been stashed. Get my laptop bag, please. Layla, you're on morphine, Sarah warned. You should be sleeping. I can sleep when I'm safe. Right now I'm a target. Get the laptop. Sarah hesitated, then sighed and grabbed the bag. She set up the tray table, adjusting it so it wouldn't press against my chest, and opened my MacBook. The screen glowed to life, a familiar portal to the world where I had control. Okay, I muttered, fighting the grogginess. Janice left the folder. Hand it to me. I opened the manila folder my mother had been so eager for me to sign. It was a mess. A hastily printed business plan for Quantum Hash LLC, a terrifyingly generic name. I flipped through the pages. The projections were laughable, graphs that went straight up with no basis in reality. But it was the equipment list that caught my eye. Vendor TechCore Solutions via eBay store. Cost $45,000. 45 grand for mining rigs, I murmured. That seems high for a starter setup, but not impossible. I looked at the bank details. Sarah, Google TechCore Solutions eBay. Sarah pulled out her phone. A few seconds of tapping later, she frowned. Nothing. There's a TechCore that sells refurbished printers in Ohio, but no mining rigs. Check the seller rating, I instructed. I can't find a store with that exact name, she said. My fingers flew across my keyboard, painful, staccato bursts of movement. I pulled up the state business registry for the address listed on the invoice. It was a residential address in a suburb about 40 minutes from where my parents lived. I ran a reverse search on the address. Zillow lists it as a rental, I said, my heart hammering against my bruised ribs. Rented 3 months ago. I dug deeper. I had tools for this, background check software I used for vetting international suppliers. It wasn't strictly for personal use, but I didn't care. I plugged in the LLC name. Quantum Hash LLC. Registered agent, Ryan Miller. Okay, Ryan owns the company, I said. That's normal. Then I looked up the vendor again. I searched for the EIN employer identification number listed on the invoice. It came back invalid. I tried the bank routing number for the wire transfer. It was a valid bank, a small credit union. I logged into a consumer fraud database I had access to. Sarah, I said, the coldness spreading from my gut to my limbs. The vendor is fake. What? This invoice? I tapped the paper with a shaking finger. It's a forgery, a bad one. The EIN is fake, the address is a rental house, and the vendor doesn't exist online. Ryan isn't buying equipment. Then where is the money going? Sarah asked, leaning in. That's the question. I closed my eyes, thinking. Ryan was impulsive, but he wasn't a criminal mastermind. He was a follower. He's not trying to build a business. He's trying to pay someone off, or... I opened a new tab. I typed in a username I remembered seeing on Ryan's laptop screen years ago when I visited for Thanksgiving. Crypto King RM. I searched it across social platforms. Nothing. Then I searched it on specialized forums, gambling forums. Jackpot. He's not mining crypto, I whispered. He's betting it. I found a profile on a high-stakes online poker site that accepted Bitcoin. The user Crypto King RM had been active as recently as 3 days ago. The account history wasn't public, but the forum posts were. He was bragging about huge swings and asking for advice on bridge loans. He's in the hole, I said, the realization settling like a stone. He's gambling. He's lost everything, and he's trying to get a $45,000 loan to chase his losses. And my parents, they're trying to make me the guarantor so when he inevitably defaults, the bank comes after me, not them. Do they know? Sarah asked. Do Janice and Greg know it's gambling? That, I said, closing the laptop as a wave of exhaustion finally crashed over me, is what we're going to find out. But we need leverage. I need you to go to my apartment. Why? In my safe, the red binder, it has the trust documents from Aunt Marie. Aunt Marie, my father's sister. The only person in that family who saw me. When she died of cancer 4 years ago, the family thought she died broke. She didn't. She left everything to me, nearly $300,000 in stocks and bonds, in a trust that only revealed itself upon her death, with strict instructions that my parents were never to know. It was my escape fund. My safety net. I need the deed to the condo too, I said, and the copy of my will. Layla, Sarah said softly, what are you planning? I'm planning a hostile takeover of my own life, I said. If they want a business transaction, I'm going to give them one. The next day, the pain was worse. The adrenaline had worn off, leaving behind a dull, throbbing ache that lived in the marrow of my bones. But my mind was sharp. Sarah had returned with the documents. They sat in my bedside drawer, a silent arsenal. At 10:00 a.m., right on cue, the door opened. It was just Janice this time. She was carrying a Tupperware container and wearing a soft, pastel cardigan. The good cop routine. Hello, sweetie, she cooed, placing the Tupperware on the table. I made your favorite, chicken soup. I know the hospital food is dreadful. I watched her. It was a performance. Every movement was calculated to evoke nostalgia, to trigger the child in me who just wanted mommy to make it better. Thank you, I said neutrally. She sat down, sighing as she settled into the chair. Your father is, well, he's upset. He feels like you were disrespectful yesterday. I was disrespectful, I asked. He threatened to disown me. He was just emotional, Janice waved a hand dismissively. He's under a lot of pressure. We all are. Ryan is. He's fragile right now, Layla. He feels like a failure. This business is his last chance to prove himself. His last chance, I raised an eyebrow, or his last chip. Janice froze. Her eyes darted to mine, wide and alarmed. What do you mean? I mean I looked into Quantum Hash LLC, I said, my voice steady. I know the vendor is fake, Mom. I know the invoice is forged. Ryan isn't buying mining rigs. He's paying off gambling debts. Janice turned pale. She gripped the arms of the chair, her knuckles white. For a second, I thought she would deny it. I expected her to scream, to call me a liar. Instead, she crumbled. He owes bad people, Layla, she whispered, her voice cracking. It's not just a bank, it's online sharks. They've been calling the house. They threatened to come over. I stared at her horrified. So you know he's gambling and you still brought me that loan application. We had to, she cried, tears spilling over. We don't have the cash liquid. We're leveraged to the hilt trying to cover his last mess. If he doesn't pay them by Friday, they said they'd hurt him. We thought if you signed, we could get the cash, pay them off, and then Ryan would work it off. He promised he would stop. You were going to let me commit bank fraud, I said, the words tasting like ash. You were going to make me co-sign a business loan for a fake business. That is a federal crime, Mom. If the bank found out, I could go to jail. I would lose my job, my license. But you wouldn't get caught, she pleaded, reaching for my hand. I pulled it away. You're smart, Layla. You always figure things out. We just need to save your brother. Please, he's your brother. And I'm your daughter, I shouted, the pain in my ribs flaring. I am lying here with broken bones, and you are trying to trick me into a felony to save him from his own stupidity. Did you even ask the doctor if I'll walk properly again? Janice flinched. Of course we care about you, but you're strong. You've always been the strong one. Ryan needs help, you don't. I don't need help, I laughed, a harsh broken sound. I am in the ICU. You have insurance, she snapped, her mask slipping. The good cop vanished, replaced by the desperate, enabling mother I knew too well. You have money, Layla. You have that trust from Marie. The air left the room. I went perfectly still. How do you know about Aunt Marie's trust? Janice covered her mouth, realizing her mistake. Her eyes darted away. How do you know? I demanded, my voice low and dangerous. We saw the mail, she stammered. A few years ago, a statement came to the house by mistake before you changed your address. We know you have it. We know you're sitting on hundreds of thousands of dollars while your family is drowning. That money was for me, I said, shaking with rage. Because Marie knew. She knew you would drain me dry if you could, and she was right. You are selfish, Janice spat, standing up. Marie was a bitter old woman, and you're just like her, hoarding money while your brother is in danger. If anything happens to Ryan, it's on your hands. Get out, I said. Layla. Get out, I screamed, slamming my hand against the bed rail. A nurse rushed in, looking between us. Ma'am, I need you to leave. Her heart rate is spiking. Janice grabbed her purse, shooting me one last look of pure venom. You think you're so superior, but you're all alone, Layla. And when the money runs out, you'll realize that family is all that matters. She stormed out. I collapsed back against the pillows, gasping for air. The betrayal was complete. They didn't just want a signature. They had been counting my money for years, waiting for a moment to strike. They felt entitled to Aunt Marie's legacy, the one thing she gave me to keep me safe from them. 2 hours later, Sarah came back from a coffee run to find me staring at the wall, stone-cold sober despite the pain. They know about the trust, I said simply. Sarah dropped the coffee cup. It didn't break, but hot latte splashed over her sneakers. What? They opened my mail years ago. They've known the whole time. That's why they felt comfortable asking for the loan. They figured I could afford to pay it off when Ryan defaulted. Sarah cleaned up the spill in silence, her face grim. They are monsters, Layla, actual monsters. And they're desperate, I said. Janice admitted Ryan owes loan sharks. They are cornered animals. My phone dinged. A notification from my home security system. Motion detected, living room. Motion detected, master bedroom. I grabbed the phone. I pulled up the camera feed. My apartment was dark, but the infrared camera showed a figure moving through my living room. They were rummaging through my desk. They pulled out a drawer and dumped it on the floor. "They're in my apartment," I said, showing Sarah the screen. Is that Ryan?" Sarah asked, squinting at the grainy footage. "It's Greg," I said, recognizing the silhouette of my father's hunch. "He has a spare key. I gave it to him for emergencies 5 years ago. I never changed the locks." I watched, helpless, as my father tore through my personal sanctuary. He wasn't looking for jewelry. He was looking for documents. He was looking for the trust fund details. He wanted the account numbers. "Call the police," Sarah said, reaching for her phone. "No," I said. "Wait." I watched him move to the safe in the closet. He punched in a code. My birthday. The safe beeped. It didn't open. I had changed the code to Sarah's birthday 6 months ago. He punched it again. Nothing. He kicked the safe. He picked up a lamp and smashed it against the wall in frustration. "Okay," I said, hitting the record button on the app. "Now call the police." Sarah dialed 911. "Yes, I'd like to report a break-in in progress at." As she gave the address, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. It was Ryan. I answered. "You greedy witch," Ryan's voice screamed in my ear. He sounded drunk or high or both. "Dad is at your place. He says you changed the safe code. Give it to me." "Ryan," I said, my voice calm, the calm of the eye of the storm. "The police are on their way to my apartment." "You're lying," he laughed, a manic, jagged sound. "You wouldn't arrest your own father." "Watch me." "If I don't get that money by tonight, I'm dead," Ryan shrieked. "Do you hear me? They're going to break my legs." "Then maybe you shouldn't have gambled away your life," I said. "And maybe Mom and Dad shouldn't have enabled you for 20 years. "I'm coming there," he snarled. "I'm at the hospital. I'm coming up. You're going to sign that paper or I'm going to make you sign it." The line went dead. "Sarah," I said, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. "Ryan is here. He's coming up." Sarah didn't hesitate. She ran to the door and threw the deadbolt. Then she hit the emergency call button on the wall. "Code Gray," she yelled into the intercom when the nurse answered. "Threatening individual headed to room 404. We need security now." Moments later, we heard heavy footsteps in the hallway, then shouting. "Let me in, she's my sister." Ryan's voice was muffled by the heavy door, but the rage was palpable. Thump. He threw his body against the door. The wood groaned. "Layla, open the door. You owe me. You owe us." Thump. "Security," a deep voice boomed from the hallway. "Step away from the do." "Ours or step back." "Get off me, that's my sister. She has my money." There was the sound of a scuffle, bodies hitting the floor, and a string of obscenities that curdled the blood. Then, the sound of handcuffs clicking. "You're making a mistake," Ryan screamed as he was dragged away. "She's the thief. She stole our inheritance. Layla, I'll kill you." The hallway fell silent, save for the heavy breathing of the security guards outside. I looked at Sarah. She was pale, clutching her phone. My phone buzzed again, a text from Janice. "Janice, what have you done? The police are arresting your father. Ryan isn't answering. You have destroyed this family." I looked at the text. I looked at the video of my father trashing my apartment. I looked at the bruise forming on my wrist where the IV line had tugged during the panic. "No," I whispered to the empty room. "I didn't destroy it. I just finally stopped holding it together." The hospital room had become my bunker. For 2 days following the arrests, silence reigned. It was a heavy, pressurized silence, the kind that precedes a tornado. Sarah had coordinated with the hospital administration to blacklist my parents from visiting, but we knew that a piece of paper wouldn't stop Janice. She operated on a plane of reality where rules were suggestions and boundaries were insults. I was scheduled to be transferred to an inpatient rehabilitation center for my hip the next morning. I just had to make it through one last afternoon. I have the lawyer on speed dial, Sarah said, organizing my bag. If she shows up, we press the button. She won't come alone, I predicted, staring out the window at the gray parking lot below. She knows she can't bully me one-on-one anymore. She tried the good cop routine, she tried the guilt trip. Now she's going to bring the artillery. I was right. At 2:00 p.m., the artillery arrived, but they didn't come to the room. The nurse manager came in, looking uncomfortable. "Ms. Layla," she said softly, "there is a group in the lobby. They claim to be your family and clergy. They are demanding to see you for a spiritual intervention. They're causing quite a scene." I looked at Sarah. "Clergy. Your mother brought Pastor Evans," Sarah guessed, her eyes widening, "and probably Aunt Linda." "Let them in," I said. "Layla, no," Sarah protested. "Let them in," I repeated, my voice hard. "If I send them away, Janice will spin the story that I'm unstable and refusing spiritual counsel. She'll paint herself as the martyr. I need to end this. I need witnesses." 10 minutes later, my small room was crowded. Janice walked in, looking like a grieving widow. She was flanked by Aunt Linda, her older sister, the matriarch of the extended family, and Pastor Evans, a man I hadn't spoken to since I was 14. Janice didn't look at me. She looked at the floor, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. "Oh, Layla," Aunt Linda began, her voice dripping with disappointed judgment. She was a tall woman with steel gray hair and a posture that radiated disapproval. "Your mother called us. She told us everything. How you've had a mental break, how you attacked your father." "Attacked my father?" I asked, my voice calm. I adjusted the bed, sitting up as straight as my ribs would allow. "Is that what she said?" "She said you've been confused since the accident," Pastor Evans chimed in, his tone soothing but patronizing. "That the medication has made you paranoid. Layla, child, calling the police on your own flesh and blood, on your father? Greg is sitting in a holding cell right now because you lost your way. He was trying to get your medication," Janice sobbed into her handkerchief. "He went to your apartment to get your prescriptions because we were worried about you, and you had him arrested like a common criminal." It was a master class in gaslighting. If I hadn't lived it, I might have believed her. "And Ryan," I asked, "why was he screaming that he was going to kill me in the hallway?" "He was distraught," Aunt Linda snapped. "He saw his sister acting like a stranger. Janice told us about the money, Layla. How you're hoarding Aunt Marie's inheritance while your brother is in danger. It's sinful. It's greed, plain and simple." Sarah stepped forward, her phone raised, recording everything. "You people are unbelievable." "Hush, girl," Linda waved a hand at Sarah. "This is family business." "No," I said loudly. The room fell silent. "This is legal business." I reached for my laptop. The movement sent a spike of pain through my hip, but I ignored it. I needed to focus. "Pastor Aunt Linda," I said, looking them in the eye. "Janice told you Greg went to my apartment for medicine." "Yes," the pastor nodded, "to help you." "Sarah, play the clip," I commanded. Sarah connected her phone to the Bluetooth speaker on the bedside table. She tapped the screen. The audio of my apartment security feed filled the room. The sound of glass shat. Turring, the sound of heavy boots kicking wood. Greg's voice, recording, "Where is the damn paper? If I don't find that account number, Ryan is dead." "Stupid, ungrateful bitch changed the code." Greg's voice, "I'm going to tear this place apart until I find the deed." The silence in the room was deafening. Aunt Linda's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Janice stopped crying instantly, her face draining of color. "That doesn't sound like someone looking for medicine," I said. "That sounds like someone looking for a deed to a condo he doesn't own." "And the danger Ryan is in," I continued. "Sarah, show them the invoice." Sarah held up the tablet, displaying the forged Quantum Hash LLC invoice next to the gambling forum screenshots. "Ryan isn't a businessman," I said, addressing my aunt directly. "He's a gambling addict. He owes $45,000 to loan sharks. Janice and Greg knew. They forged this invoice to trick me into co-signing a loan so the bank would pay off the sharks. When I refused, they tried to rob me. I turned to Janice. She looked small now. The grieving mother act had evaporated, leaving behind a terrified, exposed woman. "Tell them, Mom," I said. "Tell Pastor Evans that you tried to get me to commit federal bank fraud from my hospital bed." We were just, Janice stammered, looking around for support, but there was none. Pastor Evans took a step back from her. "Janice, is this true? Is this about gambling?" "He's a good boy," Janice shrieked, her composure finally shattering. "He just made a mistake. She has plenty of money. She's selfish. She watched her brother drown and did nothing." "I am not his life raft," I said, my voice steady and cold. "And I am not your retirement plan." I looked at Aunt Linda. The matriarch was staring at her sister with a look of horror. The illusion of the perfect family that Janice had spent 30 years curating was gone. It lay in pieces on the hospital floor, destroyed by the truth. "He broke into her house, Janice," Aunt Linda whispered. "Greg broke into her house." "He had to," Janice yelled. "She wouldn't help us." "Get out," I said, "all of you except Sarah." "Layla, please," Pastor Evans started. "Get out." Security arrived then, 2 burly guards who looked like they had been waiting for this moment. "Ma'am, you need to leave," the guard said to Janice. Janice looked at me one last time. There was no love in her eyes, only hatred. "You'll regret this. You'll be all alone." "I've been alone my whole life," I replied. "I'm just finally making it official." They were escorted out. I watched them go, Aunt Linda refusing to look at Janice, the pastor shaking his head. When the door clicked shut, the silence returned. But this time, it wasn't heavy. It was clean. It was the silence of a battlefield after the war is won. The legal fallout was swift and brutal, a domino effect that I watched from the safety of my new life. I didn't drop the charges. That was the hardest part, staying the course when the emails and letters started coming. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years reached out, telling me I was heartless for putting my father in jail. But I had Sarah. And I had a lawyer who reminded me that family is not a legal defense for burglary. Greg took a plea deal. To avoid a lengthy trial and a felony record that would strip him of his pension, he pleaded guilty to breaking and entering and malicious destruction of property. He got 3 years of probation, community service, and a restraining order that legally mandated he stay 500 feet away from me at all times. Ryan wasn't so lucky. The loan sharks Janice feared turned out to be a bit less cinematic but equally dangerous, an organized crime ring running illegal sports betting. When the money didn't come, they didn't break his legs, they forwarded his debt to a collection agency that played dirty. But before they could get to him, the police did. He was arrested for assault at the hospital and later charged with identity theft for the credit cards he had opened in my name years prior. Charges I finally allowed the prosecutor to pursue. He was sentenced to 18 months in a state facility with mandatory addiction counseling. Janice was left alone in the house she could no longer afford. With Greg's legal fees, Ryan's restitution payments, and the loss of Greg's job, he was fired quietly after the arrest made the local paper. The financial house of cards collapsed. They had to sell the family home, the shrine to Ryan's mediocrity, to pay off the debts. I heard from Aunt Linda that Janice moved into a small 1-bedroom apartment across town. She told everyone who would listen that her daughter had abandoned her. But fewer people were listening these days. 6 months later, I sat on the balcony of my new townhouse. It was a gated community with 24-hour security, a non-negotiable feature for me now. The autumn air was crisp, and the leaves were turning gold. My hip still ached when it rained. I had a long scar running down my side, a physical map of the day my life split in two, but I was walking. I was back at work, promoted to director of operations. Sarah sat across from me, sipping a glass of wine. We weren't talking about my parents. We were talking about her upcoming wedding. I was the maid of honor. Do you think about them? Sarah asked, sensing my momentary drift as I looked at the sunset. Sometimes, I admitted. I think about the little girl who used to wait by the window for them to come home, hoping today would be the day they noticed her. I took a sip of my tea. But then I remember the hospital room. I remember the silence when I asked for water. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a simple gold locket I had bought for myself. Inside the locket wasn't a picture of family. It was an inscription for the one who raised me. I had spent 29 years raising myself, teaching myself how to study, how to save, how to survive emotional starvation. I used to resent it. I used to wish I had been carried. But now, looking at the life I had built, a life free of debt, free of drama, and filled with chosen family like Sarah, I realized that raising myself was the greatest gift I could have ever given the woman I became. I realized something, I said to Sarah. What's that? They didn't break me, I smiled, feeling the truth of it settle in my chest. They just forged me. I clinked my mug against her wine glass. To Layla, Sarah said. To Layla, I replied. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows, but for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of the dark. I knew exactly how to light my own way.